The day the narcissist realizes they have lost the empath forever is not simply a personal drama of two human beings bound by wounds and illusions. It is, in truth, a psychic event that resounds in the hidden chambers of the collective unconscious. For when the bond between narcissist and empath dissolves, it is not merely an interpersonal separation, but the breaking of an archetypal spell, the undoing of an alchemical knot that has held the soul captive. And as with all archetypal confrontations, this rupture is both terrifying and liberating, drenched in shadow, yet shimmering with the possibility of individuation. You must imagine the narcissist not as a mere personality type, but as a manifestation of a deeper archetype. The wounded king who builds a fragile throne out of mirrors, who must be adored to conceal the abyss within. The narcissist does not simply manipulate. He embodies the desperate struggle of the false self against annihilation, his need to control, to seduce, to feed on the vitality of another is not the invention of malice, but the consequence of inner emptiness. He is like a hollow idol that demands worship to remain standing. The empath, on the other hand, is drawn to him, not because of naivete alone, but because she carries within herself the archetype of the healer, the redeemer, the one who feels compelled to pour her light into darkness. Her soul hears the silent scream beneath the narcissist's mask and answers it as if it were her sacred duty. Thus, their meeting is never accidental. It is an encounter staged by the unconscious, a collision between two complementary wounds. The narcissist longs for an endless fountain of attention to anesthetize his emptiness, and the empath longs to prove her worth by rescuing what cannot be saved. Together they form a tragic ritual, one consuming, the other sacrificing, one hiding from the void, the other dissolving into it. But the psyche cannot be fooled forever. The unconscious, which is the great regulator, will not allow the soul to remain chained indefinitely to an illusion. And so there comes a moment, a fateful day, when the empath awakens. She looks at the narcissist and no longer sees a wounded child to heal, but a mirror of her own neglected shadow. She realizes that her giving has not been love but compulsion, her sacrifice, not salvation but self-abandonment. In that instant, she withdraws her light. She does not weep, for her tears have already carved rivers in her soul. She simply steps away. Now, imagine what this means for the narcissist. His entire edifice is constructed on the empath's gaze. Without her reflection, his image dissolves. It is as if the sun suddenly refuses to rise for a world addicted to daylight. He is forced, perhaps for the first time, to confront the terrifying silence within. The narcissist is like a vampire who has awakened at dusk to find no prey left. His hunger echoing in the void. Rage will surface first. For rage is easier than despair. He will call her cruel, accuse her of betrayal, attempt to pull her back into the labyrinth. Yet beneath the fury is the unbearable realization. The source of his false immortality has vanished. This moment is archetypal because it mirrors the myth of the broken spell, think of Persephone escaping Hades, or Inanna ascending from the underworld after her initiation. The empath leaving the narcissist is a myth of liberation, but unlike the myths of old, here the gods do not intervene. The liberation comes from the empath's inner decision, the quiet but thunderous act of saying no more. It is a psychic revolt, a reclaiming of the soul's sovereignty. The narcissist, however, does not experience this as liberation, but as death. For him, the empath was not merely a person, but a living drug, an anesthetic against the abyss. When that drug is withdrawn, the wound of the false self gapes open, raw and uncontainable, and it is then, if he dares, that the possibility of redemption appears. But most do not dare. To face the emptiness is to die to the mask, to allow the ego's fragile kingdom to collapse. It is a task few are willing to attempt, for it requires humility, the very virtue the narcissist fears most. The empath, on her part, undergoes her own death. She must bury the fantasy of being the savior, the one whose love can transform darkness. She must grieve not only the narcissist, but her own illusion. For what she has lost is not only a relationship, but a part of her identity, the identity of the rescuer, the martyr, the light bringer, who mistakes sacrifice for love. In letting go, she feels naked before the abyss, forced to ask herself, if I am not the one who saves, then who am I? And yet, in that question lies the seed of individuation. The empath begins to realize that her sensitivity is not a curse to be exploited, nor a currency to purchase affection. It is a faculty of the soul, a gift meant not for enslavement but for creative communion. She discovers that she must first turn her healing inward, to tend the wounds she has long ignored in herself. In the solitude after the rupture, she dreams of rivers that once ran dry, now flowing again, of birds flying from cages, of stars rising over landscapes of forgotten possibility. The unconscious rewards her courage with symbols of rebirth. The narcissist's dreams, however, are haunted. He dreams of mirrors cracking, of voices mocking him, of endless corridors where no one turns to look. These are not punishments, but invitations, calls from the psyche to confront what has been denied. If he ignores them, he sinks deeper into bitterness, forever chasing new empaths to reenact the ritual. But if he listens, if he allows himself to feel the grief beneath the rage, then the possibility of transformation appears. He may discover the orphan child within, the one abandoned long ago, and in embracing that child, he may begin to dissolve the false self. But do not be deceived. Such transformations are rare. For most narcissists, the loss of the empath is not a gateway to wholeness, but a descent into further fragmentation. They seek new mirrors, new stages, new sources of supply, and yet each loss carries the same message. You cannot escape the abyss forever. The unconscious will return again and again until the truth is faced. The empath, on the other hand, carries a different fate. Once she has truly left, she cannot return to the old blindness. She may feel the tug of compassion, the temptation to go back, but something within her has shifted irrevocably. The spell has been broken. And in this freedom, she discovers a new relationship to her own shadow. She sees that her need to heal the narcissist was born from her own fear of worthlessness, her terror of being unseen. She recognizes that she projected onto him her own denied hunger for recognition. In withdrawing from him, she is not only leaving a man or a woman, she is leaving behind her own shadow's grip. This is why I say the day the narcissist realizes he has lost the empath forever is not just a personal event, it is a mythic turning point. It is the fall of an empire built on illusion and the birth of a soul reclaiming its sovereignty. For the empath, it is the passage from martyrdom to authenticity. For the narcissist, it is the invitation to death and possible rebirth. The room where this realization takes place is filled with invisible presences. The archetypes themselves gather to witness. The shadow stands in the corner, smiling grimly. The anima and animus whisper of neglected unions. The self, that mysterious center, waits silently, offering its radiance to any who dare approach. And the gods of old Hades, Inanna, Orpheus nod in recognition, for they too have seen this drama enacted across ages. Do you see, then, that your personal story is never merely yours? It is the stage upon which the eternal dramas of the psyche unfold. When you lose, when you suffer, when you awaken, you are not only living your biography, you are participating in the myth of humanity. The day the narcissist realizes he has lost the empath forever is a myth of death and resurrection. And whether he accepts or rejects the invitation of that myth is his fate. But for the empath, the departure is the first step toward wholeness. And you who listen, perhaps you have lived this story. Perhaps you have felt the coldness of the narcissist's gaze, the hunger that devoured your giving. Perhaps you have struggled to leave, pulled back by the hope that love could heal what would not be healed. And perhaps one day you too stepped away. If so, know that you enacted a sacred rite. You crossed a threshold guarded by shadows, and in doing so, you claimed your soul. The narcissist's realization is not your burden, it is his confrontation with the abyss. Your task is to walk forward, carrying the light you once gave away, now turned inward, now radiating from a center that is truly your own. When the empath withdraws her presence, the narcissist enters a psychic desert. His life had been irrigated by her constant flow of attention, and now the river has vanished into the earth. He wanders through inner landscapes that reveal nothing but his own reflection. And he despises what he sees. For the narcissist cannot survive long without a mirror. And when no other offers it, the mask begins to crack. This is the first true moment of terror. The shattering of the illusion that the false self is invincible, Consider how the psyche resists such exposure. Rage arises not only as an attack upon the other, but as a defense against the unbearable weight of emptiness. In this way, anger is the narcissist's armor, a brittle shell that conceals his weakness, but beneath the anger is grief. A grief so profound that it threatens the very cohesion of the personality. The narcissist experiences the empath's absence as annihilation because she was never simply a partner. She was the scaffolding of his fragile identity. When she vanishes, his kingdom collapses into ruins, and yet in ruins there lies a strange possibility. For the psyche often hides its treasures beneath destruction. In dreams, ruins symbolize not only decay, but the uncovering of foundations that had long been buried. The narcissist, if he dares, may see in these ruins the orphan child who was once denied love. That child still cries, not for power or adoration, but for the simple recognition of being. The tragedy is that the narcissist has built an empire precisely to avoid hearing that cry. To listen would be to dismantle everything he has constructed. The empath, however, has also entered her own wilderness. She has walked away, but walking away is only the beginning. She carries with her the residue of the bond, the phantom strings of guilt and longing. Often she dreams of returning, not because she believes in change, but because she feels incomplete without the role of savior. These dreams may take the form of wandering through labyrinths, searching for a wounded figure, or carrying water to a thirsty stranger who never drinks. Such dreams are the unconscious reminding her of the old compulsion, testing her resolve to remain free. What is at stake here is individuation, the process by which the self becomes whole. For the empath, individuation requires the recognition that her value is not measured by her ability to heal another. It demands that she reclaim her sensitivity as her own, no longer a tool to earn love, but a language of communion with life itself. The empath must discover the archetype of the sovereign within her, the one who governs her own energy without surrendering it to parasitic forces. Only then can her compassion become authentic, flowing not from fear but from freedom. The narcissist, too, is invited into individuation, though the path is steeper and often avoided. His task is to encounter the abyss he has fled all his life, to allow the false self to die so that the authentic self might emerge. In Jungian terms, this is the confrontation with the shadow in its most terrifying form. For the narcissist's shadow is not merely anger or envy, it is the unbearable truth of his own fragility. The recognition that beneath the mask is a child abandoned, unworthy, terrified of rejection. To embrace that shadow is to enter a dark night of the soul, a crucifixion of the ego's illusion. And yet, myths remind us that such deaths are the necessary prelude to rebirth. Osiris was dismembered before he could reign in the underworld. Christ was crucified before resurrection. Even the seed must rot in the earth before it can sprout. The narcissist stands at such a threshold when the empath leaves, he can either collapse further into the endless cycle of seeking new mirrors, or surrender to the death of the mask. Few choose the latter. But for those who do, the possibility of true transformation appears. You who listen may ask, what does it mean for the empath to be lost forever? Does it not imply cruelty, abandonment, a refusal of compassion? Here the psyche speaks in paradox, for in leaving, the empath does the most compassionate act possible. She refuses to perpetuate the illusion. She refuses to collude with the narcissist's denial. Her departure is not the withdrawal of love, but the insistence on truth. And truth, though it burns, is the only force that can awaken the soul. The empath's absence becomes the narcissist's mirror. No longer can he rely on her to reflect the image he craves. He must now face the distorted reflection of himself. And here lies the possibility of grace. Though it appears as torment, to lose the empath forever is to lose the illusion forever. Whether he accepts that truth or flees from it determines his fate. For the empath, the journey after departure is one of integration. She must integrate the shadow of her savior complex, the recognition that her giving was partly a defense against her own fear of abandonment. She must face her inner wound, the belief that she is only valuable when needed. By withdrawing from the narcissist, she is forced to meet this wound directly. And in meeting it, she discovers her wholeness. Imagine her dreams now. No longer does she wander the labyrinths. Instead, she begins to dream of open fields, of waters that flow without demand, of stars that shine without needing to be seen. These are symbols of the self, the deeper center of the psyche that calls her toward freedom. The self does not demand sacrifice. It invites participation. It does not consume her light. It multiplies it. Thus, the departure is not merely an escape, but an initiation. The empath is initiated into her own sovereignty, while the narcissist is initiated into the abyss of his shadow. Whether he emerges transformed or lost is uncertain. But the empath, once awakened, cannot return to blindness. She carries the scar of the bond, but also the wisdom it imparted. And you, perhaps, feel this in your own life. Perhaps you have left someone who consumed your giving, or perhaps you are the one who realizes now that without another you feel hollow. If you are the empath, your task is to guard your light, to recognize that your compassion is sacred and must not be squandered on the altar of another's denial. If you are the narcissist, your task is to turn inward, to hear the cry of the abandoned child within, and to offer it the recognition you once sought from others. In this way, the drama between narcissist and empath becomes a mirror for all of us. It reveals the ways we project our wounds, the ways we seek salvation outside ourselves, the ways we flee from the abyss within. The empath-narcissist bond is an archetypal drama of shadow and light, of illusion and awakening, of death and rebirth. And when the spell is broken, Both are invited to step onto the path of individuation. The day the narcissist realizes he has lost the empath forever is therefore not only his tragedy but her liberation. It is the collapse of illusion and the birth of authenticity. It is a psychic apocalypse, an unveiling of truths that had long been hidden, and in that unveiling, though painful, lies the seed of wholeness. The soul's drama unfolds with a strange inevitability once the bond has been broken. The narcissist, left to wander his barren kingdom, clings desperately to the fragments of his shattered throne. He seeks replacements, new empaths, new sources of light to disguise the darkness, but each new reflection feels thinner, more fragile, for he knows somewhere in the depths of his unconscious that he has lost the one who once gave without limits. That knowledge becomes a tormenting ghost, haunting his nights, whispering in his dreams. He begins to sense that his hunger is endless, that no feast will ever suffice. This realization, though painful, is the beginning of a possible awakening. The empath, meanwhile, enters into a quieter but no less profound initiation. Having walked away, she now stands before the mirror of her own being. At first, she sees only exhaustion and emptiness, for so much of her energy has been poured into the other. She may even feel hollow, as though the very purpose of her existence has vanished. Yet, as days pass, she begins to sense subtle stirrings, like shoots of grass breaking through the soil after winter. Her own desires, long buried, to begin to whisper again. She hears faintly the voice of her authentic self, the one silenced beneath the demands of sacrifice. This stage is one of solitude, and solitude is not easy, for in solitude the shadow appears. She must face the truth that her need to give endlessly was not pure altruism, but a strategy of survival. She remembers her own childhood wounds, times when love was conditional, when she felt valued only if she cared for others. The narcissist was not merely a partner, but an embodiment of those wounds, a stage upon which she replayed the drama of her early life. To see this clearly is both painful and liberating. Painful because it exposes the depth of her unconscious patterns. Liberating because it reveals the possibility of freedom. In dreams, she may encounter archetypal figures, a child crying in a locked room, a healer bleeding from her own wounds, a bird with broken wings that slowly learns to fly again. These images speak of her inner condition. The child represents her neglected innocence. The healer, her compulsive self-sacrifice. The bird, her emerging freedom. Such dreams are not random. They are the psyche's way of guiding her toward integration. For the narcissist, dreams take a different form. He may see endless corridors lined with mirrors that show not his face but emptiness. He may dream of falling into pits, of chasing shadows that vanish as he grasps them. These are images of the false self dissolving. The unconscious revealing that the mask cannot sustain him forever. If he has courage, he may begin to listen. He may feel the grief that lies beneath his rage, the loneliness that underpins his hunger, but more often he resists, seeking new mirrors, new illusions to stave off the abyss. And so the cycle repeats, yet even cycles have cracks, and through those cracks the light of awareness may slip in. Sometimes, after losing the empath, the narcissist encounters a silence so absolute that he cannot escape it. He finds that no matter how many new admirers he collects, none can replicate the quality of the empath's presence, for the empath did not only mirror his grandiosity, she also saw his wounded child, and that gaze, though painful, was irreplaceable. Losing it is like losing the last tether to authenticity. Whether he turns that loss into bitterness or transformation depends upon his willingness to surrender the mask. The empath, in contrast, begins to notice that her sensitivity, once weaponized against her, is becoming a source of power. She realizes she can feel without being consumed, give without being depleted, love without being enslaved. This realization comes gradually through moments of self-recognition. Perhaps she paints and feels joy rising from within rather than from another's approval. Perhaps she walks in nature and senses the earth speaking directly to her, needing no intermediary. Perhaps she sits in silence and discovers that her presence, her mere being, is enough. This is the essence of individuation, to no longer live by the dictates of unconscious compulsion, but by the rhythm of the authentic self. The empath learns that her gift is not meant to be squandered on those who refuse to see, but to be offered freely in alignment with her soul. Her compassion becomes discerning, her boundaries firm, yet gentle. She no longer bleeds to prove her worth. She radiates because she is whole. And so the archetypal balance shifts. The narcissist, if he does not awaken, becomes a tragic figure, a wanderer condemned to chase reflections that never satisfy. The empath, by leaving, becomes the embodiment of the mythic heroine who descends into the underworld and returns with new wisdom. She has faced the shadow of sacrifice and emerged with sovereignty. You may feel these truths echo within you, for the drama of empath and narcissist is not limited to lovers. It lives in friendships, families, workplaces, even within our own psyche. We all contain parts that crave adoration and parts that long to save. We all face the temptation to lose ourselves in illusion, and we all are called at some point to break the spell, to leave behind the false and embrace the true. When the narcissist realizes he has lost the empath forever, a silence falls, a silence that is both death and possibility. For him, it is the death of illusion. For her, it is the birth of authenticity. And within this silence lies a message for all of us, that love without boundaries is not love, that giving without self-awareness is not compassion, and that wholeness requires us to face both the shadow and the light within. This is not a sentimental tale, but a myth of transformation. It is the psyche's way of teaching us that every ending is also an initiation, every loss a doorway, every silence a threshold. The empath's departure is not cruelty but destiny, not abandonment but awakening. In the narcissist's despair, though tragic, is the echo of a truth that has waited all along, that the false self must die for the true self to live. When the day arrives, the day the narcissist finally perceives that the empath is gone beyond. Recall, it is not only an external event, but a psychic earthquake. The tremors reverberate through the unconscious, shaking loose what has been hidden. For him, it is a collapse, a crumbling of the fragile palace he built upon borrowed light. For her, it is both an ending and a beginning, a passage into a life no longer dictated by compulsion. And for us who witness this archetypal story, it is an invitation to see ourselves reflected in both figures, for we each carry within us the temptation to dominate and the temptation to sacrifice. The narcissist often responds first with fury, attempting to regain control, but when his strategies fail, when his words no longer bind, when his presence no longer intimidates, he is forced into silence, and it is in silence that the truth emerges. He realizes that he cannot summon her back, cannot recreate the spell. The empath is lost to him forever. This realization is a psychic death, the kind that strips away illusion. It is what Jung called the confrontation with the self, a meeting with the deeper truth of one's being, which annihilates the ego's false certainties. Yet most turn away. The pain is too great, the void too threatening, and so many narcissists double down, seeking new empath, repeating the pattern. They become wanderers in a desert of their own making, chasing mirages that vanish when touched. Their tragedy is not that they are unloved, but that they cannot accept love, for to accept love would require them to admit vulnerability, to admit need, to admit that beneath the grandiose mask lies a trembling child. To do this would be to dismantle everything, to face the abyss head on. And so many never do, but sometimes, rarely, one does. Sometimes the loss of the empath is so total, so final, that it cannot be denied. The narcissist is left alone with the abyss, and instead of fleeing, he falls. In that fall he discovers not annihilation, but an unexpected tenderness, the presence of the inner child long abandoned. If he can cradle that child, if he can listen to its cries without judgment, he begins the long path toward integration. It is not a quick redemption, nor a guarantee of transformation, but it is the first step toward wholeness. For the empath, the journey takes a different shape. Having left, she must resist the pull of guilt, the illusion that returning would heal. She must learn that her worth is not measured by the suffering she endures or the sacrifices she makes. She must recognize that her gift is not to save the broken, but to live authentically, to embody the wholeness she once sought in another. This is a painful lesson, for it dismantles her identity as savior. But it is also a liberating one, for it allows her to step into her true self. In the silence that follows departure, she may feel lost, as if stripped of meaning, but slowly she begins to hear new voices, the voices of her own desires, her own creativity, her own self. She begins to dream not of saving others, but of walking her own path, of expressing her own truth. Her compassion deepens, no longer tangled with compulsion, but flowing freely from a place of sovereignty. She learns to love without losing herself, to give without being consumed, to be present without being enslaved. This is the archetypal rebirth, the phoenix rising from ashes. The empath becomes not merely a survivor, but a sovereign, one who embodies the archetype of the healed healer. She no longer seeks to mend others to avoid her wounds. Instead, she tends her own wounds, and from that wholeness offers her light to the world. Her departure from the narcissist is not the end of love, but the beginning of true love, love that is rooted in authenticity, in boundaries, in freedom. And so we see that this drama is not simply personal, but universal. Each of us must one day face the narcissist within the part of us that craves adoration, that fears vulnerability, that hides behind masks. And each of us must face the empath within the part of us that seeks to prove worth through sacrifice, that longs to be loved by saving others. To see these figures clearly, to withdraw from the illusions they weave, is the work of individuation. The day the narcissist realizes he has lost the empath forever is a parable for the soul's journey. It reminds us that illusions must die for truth to be born, that false selves must collapse for authenticity to emerge. It teaches us that love without awareness is bondage, but love rooted in the self is liberation. So, if you have lived this story, if you have walked away or been left behind, know that you are participating in an ancient myth. You are enacting the eternal dance of shadow and light, loss and rebirth. Do not see it as mere tragedy, but as initiation. For every rupture carries within it the seed of transformation, and every ending conceals a new beginning. The narcissist's despair is not your burden to carry. The empath's awakening is not a betrayal, but a destiny. And the silence that follows the breaking of the bond is not emptiness, but a threshold. Beyond it lies the possibility of wholeness, the path toward individuation, the invitation of the self. Thus, I say to you, embrace the silence, endure the death of illusion, walk through the threshold, for on the other side you will discover that what you thought was loss was in truth liberation, and what you thought was the end was in truth the beginning of your soul's true life.